The lonely uncle seat was positioned at the back corner of the Westfield Estate, where my nephew's wedding reception glittered with excessive floral arrangements and champagne fountains. Table 18. A table for one with an empty chair beside me that might as well have had a spotlight on it. From my isolated corner, I could barely see the head table where my nephew Marcus and his bride Penelope celebrated with their young, successful, perfectly paired friends. "We saved you a seat, Uncle Daniel," Marcus had said yesterday with barely concealed pity. "Don't worry about bringing anyone. We understand you're still looking. At 41 and unmarried, I was the family's cautionary tale, the successful career man who'd sacrificed personal happiness for professional achievement. What they didn't know, what I'd been contractually prohibited from discussing until the engagement was formally announced next week, was that I'd been in a committed relationship for 18 months. With Crown Princess Isabella of Denmark. Third in line to the throne, internationally recognized humanitarian, and the woman I'd proposed to 3 months ago on a private beach in the Maldives. Some consulting work in Europe, my brother Michael had explained to Penelope's wealthy family at the rehearsal dinner. Travels a lot. Never settles down. Career-obsessed, you know how it is. My consulting work was serving as senior advisor to the European Commission on Economic Development, a position that required living in Copenhagen and working closely with Scandinavian government officials. Which was how I'd met Isabella at a policy conference 2 years ago. My phone buzzed, the private line Isabella used. I stepped onto the empty terrace, away from the reception noise and pitying glances from coupled relatives. "Svensson," I answered in Danish, the language that had become second nature. "Daniel, darling, we're 10 minutes out." Isabella's voice was warm with amusement. "Henrik is asking if the security sweep is complete." "Confirmed." The venue manager nearly fainted when I showed him the royal credentials yesterday. I smiled despite the chaos inside. "You're sure about this? We could wait until the formal announcement." "Absolutely not. You've told me how they treat you. Time they understood who you really are. Besides, I'm tired of hiding. Let them see. The press will have a field day." "Good. We were going public next week anyway. This is just more memorable." I could hear the smile in her voice. "See you soon, Min Elskid." I returned to table 18 as the main course was being cleared. My table mates, I had none, meant the servers kept forgetting I existed. From my corner, I watched Marcus's perfect wedding unfold like a production designed to highlight everything I supposedly lacked. The toasts began. Penelope's father gave a speech about successful young couples. Marcus's best man told stories about finding your soulmate young. Then my brother Michael stood, glass raised, his face already flushed with champagne and sentiment. "And I want to acknowledge my brother Daniel," Michael said, his voice carrying across the room. "Still out there searching for love at 41. Still hopeful. Still believing his person exists somewhere." Polite laughter rippled through the guests. Several people turned to look at my empty table, at the vacant +1 seat, at the lonely uncle in his expensive suit sitting alone. "We all hope Daniel finds what Marcus and Penelope have found," Michael continued, oblivious to my expression. "That someday he'll stop chasing career advancement long enough to build a real life. To find real happiness. To finally settle down and—" The distant sound of helicopter rotors cut through his speech. I checked my watch. Right on time. Michael paused, confused by the noise growing louder. Other guests were looking around, trying to identify the source. Through the terrace windows I could see it approaching. The distinctive royal helicopter with the Danish coat of arms, flanked by 2 security aircraft. The venue manager, Thomas, appeared at my side, his face pale. "Mr. Svensson, the security team is requesting access to position themselves." "Let them in," I said calmly. She specifically requested minimal disruption. My sister-in-law Catherine had overheard, her face showing confusion. The security detail entered first, Royal Danish Protection Unit, discreet but unmistakably elite forces. They moved through the ballroom with professional efficiency, establishing perimeter positions while guests stared in bewildered silence. Then Crown Princess Isabella appeared in the doorway. She was 36, elegant in a tailored dress that somehow managed to be both casual and regal. Her presence commanded immediate attention, not from arrogance, but from a lifetime of royal bearing and genuine grace. She was also the most photographed woman in Scandinavia, regularly featured in international media for her humanitarian work and modern approach to royal duty. And she was looking directly at me with barely contained amusement. Daniel. Her voice carried across the silent ballroom, Danish accent adding music to my name. So sorry I'm late, darling. The meeting with the UN delegation ran over. Every head in the room swiveled between the crown princess and my empty table. She crossed the ballroom with confident strides, her protection detail maintaining professional distance. She walked past the head table where Marcus's mouth had literally fallen open, past my brother's table where Michael had gone completely white, past all the young successful couples, straight to table 18 in the back corner. She kissed me, not dramatically but with the easy intimacy of an established relationship. Miss me? Always, I said, standing to embrace her properly. How was the flight? Bumpy over the North Sea. But worth it to see this. She glanced around, taking in the isolated table, the empty +1 seat, the lonely uncle setup. Interesting seating arrangement for a senior economic advisor. Usually when I attend events with you in Copenhagen, you're seated with ministers and ambassadors. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Penelope's father, a corporate executive who'd spent cocktail hour discussing business ventures, had actually stood up from his chair, recognition flooding his face. You didn't have to fly in for this, I said, playing along with our planned approach. Are you joking? Miss your nephew's wedding? Besides, we need to finalize our announcement. She pulled out her phone casually, showing me the screen. The Palace Communications team sent the final draft. They're releasing it Monday morning. On her screen was the official royal statement, complete with the Danish royal seal. The Royal House of Denmark is pleased to announce the engagement of Her Royal Highness Crown Princess Isabella to Mr. Daniel Svensson. Marcus had descended from the head table, Penelope trailing behind, both moving like they were in a dream. Uncle Daniel, you never mentioned you were dating, that you knew. You never asked about my personal life, I said calmly. You assumed because I travel for work and haven't brought anyone to family events that I must be lonely and searching. We should have been informed, Penelope's mother interjected, having rushed over with barely concealed panic. If we'd known royalty was attending. I'm not here as royalty, Isabella said coolly, her English perfect with that charming Danish lilt. I'm here as Daniel's fiancée. I came to support him at his nephew's wedding. She paused with devastating precision. I came to meet the family that somehow decided he belonged at a table alone with an empty seat beside him. Thomas appeared with additional seating, having mobilized the entire venue staff. Your Royal Highness, we weren't informed. We have premium tables available. I'll sit with Daniel, Isabella said firmly, settling into the empty +1 seat. Though perhaps you could bring champagne that's actually French? What you've served back here is rather disappointing. My brother Michael had abandoned his half-finished toast, approaching our table with an expression of complete bewilderment. Daniel, I don't understand. You never said anything. You let us all think. You assumed, I corrected. You assumed because I work in Europe and value my privacy that I must be alone. You made jokes about my single status without ever asking if I was actually single. Catherine, my sister-in-law, had joined us, her face cycling through shock and embarrassment. But if we'd known you were engaged to, that you were with. That's the problem, Isabella interjected, her voice gentle but firm. Daniel's worth shouldn't change based on who he's with. His career is extraordinary, he's shaped economic policy affecting millions of Europeans. His work has earned him recognition from 3 heads of state. But you dismissed all of that because he didn't fit your timeline for personal relationships. Marcus's best man, who'd been mid-toast when the helicopter arrived, stood frozen with his champagne glass still raised, apparently unsure whether to continue or sit down. Phones had appeared throughout the ballroom. Crown Princess Isabella at a Virginia wedding was already trending globally. Royal correspondents were scrambling. Marcus's carefully planned society wedding was transforming into international news. My nephew's college roommate, apparently a business journalist, was frantically typing, probably realizing he'd just witnessed a major royal story break in real time. When were you going to tell us? Michael asked, his voice strained. The formal announcement is Monday, I said. We've been engaged for 3 months. Living together in Copenhagen for over a year before that. Dating for 18 months total. But you never visited. Never asked meaningful questions about my life abroad. You just made assumptions and jokes about the lonely uncle. Mom had pushed through the crowd, Dad right behind her, both looking like they'd aged a decade in 5 minutes. Daniel, sweetheart, we had no idea. You should have told us. I tried to tell you. Multiple times. You changed the subject or made jokes. You stopped asking about my personal life because you assumed the answer would be disappointing. Isabella stood, her royal bearing commanding absolute attention. Daniel Svensson is one of the most brilliant economic minds I've worked with. His policy recommendations have shaped Danish-EU relations. His analysis influenced trade agreements affecting millions of citizens. He's respected by ministers, ambassadors, and economists across Europe. She turned to Michael, her expression sharp but controlled. Your brother helped negotiate economic frameworks that stabilized 3 countries during financial crises. But apparently that's less important than settling down on your preferred timeline. Michael's face had gone from white to red. We didn't know. He never said. He couldn't say, Isabella corrected. Much of his work involves confidential negotiations. And his personal life was private because we chose to keep it private until the official announcement. But privacy isn't the same as loneliness. He's never been searching. He found exactly what he wanted. She took my hand, the engagement ring, a flawless diamond surrounded by Danish royal sapphires, now fully visible to the room. Cameras flashed. Someone gasped. Penelope looked like she might faint. The protection officers had established a secure perimeter while maintaining minimal disruption, but their presence transformed the entire atmosphere. This was no longer just a family wedding. It was a royal event, documented and scrutinized. Catherine attempted damage control. We're hosting a family gathering next month. You're both invited, of course. We'd love to celebrate properly. We'll check our schedules, Isabella said diplomatically. Though I should mention that Daniel and I will be rather busy. The engagement announcement Monday. The official reception in Copenhagen next month. Then the state visit to the UK, followed by the charity gala in Paris that I'm hosting. Mom's face showed dawning horror as she realized how thoroughly she'd misunderstood her own son's life. One of Penelope's bridesmaids approached shakily. Your Royal Highness, I follow you on social media. Your humanitarian work is incredible. I had no idea you were engaged. We've been waiting for the right moment to announce, Isabella said graciously. Though I suspect this wasn't quite how the palace communications team envisioned the news breaking. She pulled out her phone again, typing quickly. I should text Henrik before he sees this on the news. The Royal Communications Director is going to have a very interesting evening. Thomas had arranged a proper table, moving us from the back corner to a premium position near the windows. But everyone had seen where they'd seated me. The wedding videographer's footage, already being shared globally, showed the lonely uncle table in all its isolated glory, followed by the crown princess's entrance. Marcus approached our new table looking younger and more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. Uncle Daniel, I'm sorry. I thought I was being kind, acknowledging that you were still looking for someone. I didn't realize. You didn't ask, I said. You made assumptions based on limited information and your own timeline for success. You're 28, newly married, and you assumed anyone over 40 and unmarried must be lonely. I was wrong, he said quietly. Obviously. Penelope had joined him, her perfect wedding smile cracking under the weight of what was happening. We would have seated you differently. Would have included. You would have treated me differently only because of who I'm with, I interrupted gently. Not because of who I am. That's the lesson here. Isabella checked her watch. We should go soon. Early flight back to Copenhagen tomorrow. I have that meeting with the Danish Parliament about the education initiative. I nodded, then looked at my family one final time. Congratulations on your marriage, Marcus and Penelope. I genuinely wish you both happiness. But understand this. I'm done being pitted. I'm done being treated as somehow less because I don't share every detail of my private life. Either you respect my choices and my privacy, or we maintain polite distance. As we stood to leave, Isabella, me, and the Royal Danish Protection Unit that had turned Marcus's reception into a security zone, guests parted automatically. Penelope's father tried to network. Her mother attempted to engage Isabella in conversation about charity work. Michael reached out, but I kept walking. Outside, the helicopter waited on the lawn where it had landed, much to the venue's gardener's dismay. Isabella's personal assistant had arrived with the security team, handling logistics with practiced efficiency. Too dramatic? Isabella asked as we walked across the grass. Perfect amount, I said. Thank you for coming. Thank you for finally letting me crash a family event. Though I should warn you, the press is going to have a field day with this. Royal engagement revealed at family wedding is already trending worldwide. My phone was exploding. International news alerts. Messages from colleagues in Copenhagen expressing amusement. The Danish tabloids were losing their minds. The British press was analyzing every detail. Even the American media was picking up the story. By morning, every major outlet would cover it. By Monday, the official palace announcement would be anticlimactic compared to the viral wedding footage. Marcus called. I declined. Mom texted, please come back inside. We need to talk. We're so proud of you. I silenced my personal phone and checked my work messages. The European Commission wanted to schedule a congratulatory call. 3 ambassadors had sent formal congratulations. My team in Copenhagen was already handling the media inquiries. Monday's Financial Times is running a profile on your economic work, Isabella said, settling into the helicopter. Apparently your engagement to a crown princess makes you suddenly newsworthy. I smiled. I've been newsworthy in policy circles for years. They just didn't notice because it wasn't royal gossip. Well, now you're both. Economic policy expert and royal fiancé. The think pieces write themselves. As the helicopter lifted off, I looked down at the Westfield Estate, at the lit ballroom where Marcus's wedding had become a lesson in assumptions, at the back corner where they'd seated the lonely uncle, at the family that had never bothered to ask about the life I'd actually built. The empty +1 seat was below me. The woman I loved was beside me. And I'd never been lonely at all. I'd been building a life in Copenhagen, falling in love with a remarkable woman, doing meaningful work that affected millions of lives. They just never asked. The lonely uncle existed only in their imagination. The real Daniel Svensson had been living fully all along. They'd simply refused to see it,